this does appear to be the state of discourse in many ways. The last election, the Prime Minister couldn't get off his bus sometimes. Social media is an absolute cesspool. This is why I haven't done any kind of social media in months right now. And I'm getting nowhere near the level of scrutiny and abuse that my female colleagues get or that anybody in elected office gets. So what do you make of when something like this happens this week?
Are you asking me that? Yeah. I mean, look, this has been politics for years. I don't know where these other panelists have been, but I mean, this was certainly my experience when I was in politics. There's nothing new to this. There are obviously going to always be reactionaries. There's always going to be a group of people that take it too far, that make these kind of threats. Of course, I agree with others that they shouldn't be doing that. I do think it's a bit rich that, appointed for life senators think that they are somehow beyond having to explain their actions. That somehow there's a great affront that their office numbers should be published and that people should be told to hold them to account. I think that that's all a bit much, and I think there's a bit of that in this protest from these independent Liberal senators as well. That's not to excuse what Don Plett did. I think his actions in the Senate were pretty reprehensible, certainly beyond what one would expect in such an esteemed chamber. But this again, let's be careful in terms of looking at how this issue is being weaponized for political benefit also. And I think that that's where, again, this high dudgeon that comes up on the one side about how horrible the Conservatives and the right-wingers are, is driving a political narrative that benefits the Liberal Party. And so let's just understand what the political dynamic is. Would it be better not having this? Of course. I wish we didn't have it 25 years ago when I was more active in politics. But this is from time to time the way it goes. Right, but I guess, Supriya, this particular issue, the senators voted to adjourn. The debate on this particular legislation is back, right? They've picked it up. It wasn't shut it down, lock it down, stop it, end it, kill it. So it was kind of misrepresented, and then their phone numbers were put there on social media for the world to see. I mean, isn't that a little bit different than someone who's upset with a politician looking up the number and making calls as opposed to, say, having it handed to them?
Yes, 100%, as is having something that has their picture on there, right? That's a huge difference. And as somebody who about 3 years ago had to resign in a very public way because of death and rape threats that not only I was receiving, but a rape threat that my then just barely 1-year-old daughter had received while I was host of the morning show on a talk radio station in Toronto, I can say from a very personal place that it's very scary when you're actually getting threats where a location is cited. I used to have my co-host Matt Gurney regularly have to walk me in and out of the building because there was no building security, and the media company we were working for didn't necessarily take what was happening to me super seriously. So as a friend and a colleague, he was basically my go-to security guy in these situations, and it's incredibly frightening. And for all the folks that are like, well, this is the way it's always been. I mean, I call BS on that. Sure, folks have always been ready to write in letters and mail it with a stamp, but the sheer volume that you get on social media is just not comparable to the way it was 20 years ago, 15 years ago, even 10 years ago. And I think we need to recognize that we're operating in a completely new environment in which all of this anger is being harvested and weaponized against your political opponents with a sprinkling of mis and disinformation throughout that. And that's why, it's important to pay attention to what's happening in online spaces. And it's important to pay attention to what's happening with the direction of this Conservative Party, because it's increasingly becoming one with the online reactionary movement. Yeah, no.
Really, I get it. I'm not going to go through my own story of having close personal protection because people were threatening to shoot me in the head. I'm not going to talk about the 2 feet tall stack of letters that came in where people would detail how
this is the oppression Olympics, okay? I'm not trying to out-oppress
you are exactly trying to do that. No, you are exactly trying to do that, Supriya, because you in fact did say that this is, oh no, this is only new, this is only happening because of, this particular social media.
Liberals are in government,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is, unfortunately a phenomenon of public life, and it is a terrible one. And I think we all recognize that, but I mean, let's just, not
what
all
you
of a sudden
got
be
was the
holier than thou
analog
here.
version. That's not the digital version. Even I got the analog version because
You
I
know,
was getting talk radio
the threatened
listeners.
bullet
I
wasn't analog or digital. It was a threatened bullet.
Okay, no, and look, I think that you all obviously have very difficult experiences with this, and none of you deserved it. I think the distinction, and certainly the point I was trying to make, is not that it hasn't happened. I mean, we've all seen political assassinations and violence over the decades. It's just that it moves faster and on a greater scale in the digital age, is the way it seems to me, or at least we learn about it more.
And we know that from the research. I work at McGill. We look at this stuff.
Yeah, of course, and this is my point. Like, James, just because I don't believe Andrew Scheer intended for death threats to be the result of this tweet, but this is the consequence of this sort of environment we're in with the way this technology and these platforms move.
Social media has shortened the distance to which people feel that they can yell at people in public life. And for some people, they think that extends then to an ability to shorten the physical distance. And I get that. And therefore, people in public life need to take precautions. However, with this particular dynamic here, the Senate is not above scrutiny. The Senate is half of our legislative process. They should be scrutinized. They should not feel threatened. And if there's going to be an investigation, by the way, there's going to be an investigation into hyperbolic, over-the-top, overly aggressive, cruel campaigns against senators, then I think maybe you ought to have Senator Pamela Wallin on the show, or Senator Patrick Brazeau, who was struggling with addiction and had journalists and others outside of his house making fun of him. Like, there are a lot of examples of people who have gone through a lot of cruelty in public life. So, my point is we need to reel it back and slow it down. But fair scrutiny, fair analysis is not bullying, and it's not cruel, and it's not over the top. People should feel safe at work. Sometimes it does seem like it's getting a lot worse, but I think we need to be a little bit more, I think, prudent in our judgment of all these things.
Gang, thanks. I appreciate this. I know it got a bit heated, and I appreciate you all sharing the stories of what you went through. And I think it's important for people to know it, right? Because I've done this my whole life up close and seen what people in the public eye have gone through, and I find a lot of it awful. And I'm sorry it happened to you, gang, and hopefully we find a way to stop it. But we got to leave it there. Thanks to the Power Panel, Supriya Dwivedi, James Moore, Andrew Thomson, Shachi Curl. Thanks so much, gang. See you next Thursday.